want to talk about and try to simplify how you want to be training and spending most of your time as an endurance athlete. Talking about polarized training and pyramidal training, what they are, and how to set them up for your weekly training. We'll start with the most important thing is understanding your heart rate zones, how to do that, and where to find them. The simplest way is if you just Google carbonate formula and then type in calculator soup. It should be the first thing that pops up. You're going to, if you don't actually know your actual max heart rate based on a hard workout you've done, you can just put in your age, which will do 220 minus your age, and then your resting heart rate, which if you're wearing a watch when you sleep, or just have a better idea of where your resting heart rate is, generally when you're sitting, relaxing, you can put that in. Then it just calculate where your zones are. So zone 1 through 5 usually. Now 80% of your training, generally for polarized, you're gonna want to spend at zone 2. That's your easier endurance efforts. And for polarized, you wanna spend 20% at the higher intensities, or zone 4 to zone 5. That's where you're gonna see most of your benefit and see most people get the biggest improvements from those two zones. The other method is pyramidal training, which is fairly similar. You're gonna spend about 75% of your time in the zone 2, 20% at a moderate pace, which is they call it sweet spot. It's the top half of your zone 3 on that calculator and the bottom half of zone 4. And then 5% at a higher intensity, which is zone 5. Just kind of breaking your time into that. It's really preference in terms of which one you want to do. They both seem to have pretty similar outcomes. How many sessions, how long for each one. So we'll start with polarized, just to make it easy. Zone 2, right, you're gonna want to keep your heart rate between those zones, whether you're doing run or bike to start out with. Now another note to make is your max heart rate will usually be different between running and biking. Running is usually higher, mostly because you're not actually loading your legs through a big range of motion. The only time you're actually putting load through your legs is when you're pushing off the ground and you're trying to spend as little time doing that as possible. Whereas when you're biking, you're constantly loading your legs, putting them through a bigger range of motion and recruiting bigger muscles. So your heart is having to beat harder and to supply the bigger muscles with enough blood and oxygen, but it can't pump as fast because of that. Now, the next thing to think about is how long should you be spending in that zone to see improvement. Research finds typically about 4 to 6 hours per week is where you're going to start seeing the improvements at zone 2. So you're going to shoot for that of at least 1 hour sessions for each session, so 4 to 6 sessions per week. Say you do 4 sessions, where you're aiming for 6 hours, you could do 4 1.5 hour sessions if you have the time, but at least 1 hour. And then you're breaking the higher intensity into 20% of that time. So 20% of 4 hours or 6 hours, or if you're training for longer races, it's okay to do more zone 2 work. Like if you're training for an Ironman, the pros get up to 20 plus hour weeks sometimes, depending on who's doing it. Now, here's a couple ways to help keep yourself honest. One of them I'm wearing right now. This is the Garmin HR Heart Rate Monitor Pro. It helps me a lot because growing up as a sprinter, I don't have a lot of idea of where I am pace-wise or what it feels like to actually go easy. So, a few things I do to keep myself in check. One, if I can hold a full conversation like this, granted I'm kind of labored breathing, but I can actually talk in full paragraphs. Two, if my heart rate is in the zone, that I want it to be based on that calculator. And I trust this thing more because it's not moving around a lot and it's just generally more accurate than the wristwatch. And then checking in with myself the day after a ride, like how fatigued am I? Because I shouldn't, if I'm doing truly zone 2, my body shouldn't be very fatigued. That's where you get the benefit from. You can go longer on these rides, get most of the benefit from an endurance aspect without building up fatigue in your body and being exhausted. So that's why you can do more and more of it. Now, in terms of the higher intensity sessions, research has shown that you typically don't want to be doing more than 2 sessions per week. Definitely not more than 3 as an endurance athlete, because you're not seeing more benefit from doing more than those. So if you're looking to spend 20% of your time, look to make those sessions as long as you need to based on how much zone 2 training you're doing. And these numbers aren't set in stone. It can be 75%, 85, 90% of zone 2, and then 25 or down to 10, 15% of high intensity training, especially depending on what race you're doing. If you're doing an Ironman, you can spend even less time doing high intensity. More time is building your length of time spent working out. But those 2 high intensity sessions are what's going to help you build your speed running, biking, swimming. So they are valuable. And then the other part is the pyramidal training, which is very similar, right? You're just looking at spending 75% of your time in zone 2, 20% at a moderate between like the upper end of zone 3 based on that calculator, and then lower half of zone 4, and then 5% at a high intensity. So you'd be spending a really short amount of time in zone 5, that highest intensity. The research has shown that they both are pretty similar in terms of the results that they produce. But the key is that long majority of time spent in that easy long riding zone 2. Now, in the off season like I am right now, I don't have any races coming up for a while. So I'm spending most of my time doing the zone 2 training, and then I'm replacing a lot of my higher intensity stuff with some short strength sessions where I'm really just trying to build up the force output in terms of low reps, high weight, or high intensity and lifting weight, squatting, leg pressing, Romanian deadlifts, those things, which we can go over in another video. And those, I consider, the way I think about it is, those are my bank accounts. So zone 2, I'm making a deposit into my aerobic bank, and strength I'm putting into my strength bank. And those gains compound over time to really make me a better athlete consistently. The more sprinting or faster sessions, running, biking, swimming, I'll do more closer to race season to get my body primed for those kind of intensities that I'm looking to put out. But they're not my main focus right now. Now let's go over a couple things to keep in mind when you're trying to train zone 2 to make sure that you're actually doing it correctly. Number 1, I said, you can look at that heart rate, keep your zone in zone 2, and I recommend the heart rate strap over the wristwatch. Number 2 is, while you're doing that, make sure you can speak in full conversation, paragraphs. Labored breathing is okay, but I can keep talking and it's not really giving me an issue. 3 is another thing you can check, which you don't always have to do, but breathing through your nose. Whereas if I'm working at a higher intensity, that just is not going to happen. And then another thing you could try to think about is, I could eat a full meal before or after this workout and be completely fine. Higher intensity, it's pretty easy to keep in mind, to have an idea if you're working hard. But if you're trying to differentiate zone 4 to zone 5, use those heart rates to the best of your ability. In zone 4, you're obviously going to be able to spend longer in than zone 5. So zone 5, you're going to be trying for your short 30-second sprint workouts, for example. Whereas zone 4 might be longer intervals, like anywhere between 2 to 8 minutes, several times with rest in between. But in general, that's how you want to be dividing your time training as an endurance athlete to see the most benefit and crush your races. So let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. My name is Connor Ganser. I'm a doctor of physical therapy and soon to be Ironman. Signing off. Thank you for watching.